I'm here with Ashwini Mokashi, and we're going to talk about the philosophical consultation. So my first question to you is, what is, according to you, a philosophical consultation?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to your platform, Matthias. It's great being here and looking forward to having a dialogue about philosophical counseling or consultation. So I guess sometimes we make a distinction between philosophical counseling and consultation. And for me, it's basically one and the same thing. It really involves a dialogue which is based on philosophical principles, and it's very sort of like trying to figure out ethical and value solutions to figure out some real life problem. And mostly when I've used it with people one on one, then I used to call that philosophical counseling. And if I used it with a group or with sort of professional in a professional setting, then I would call that philosophical consultation. But it's really a dialogue, and it sort of mirrors what we call as Socratic dialogues, and is based on the use of some ethical principles and how we expand them and how we apply them to a real life solution situation.
So basically, you would say there is no real difference between the two terms, consultation and counseling. It's just you use them in different contexts.
I mean, there is a difference only in terms of a situation. So, like, we use situational ethics in different ways as well. If you're talking to a person, they're more looking into sort of, resolution of their personal issues. And that's very close to psychological counseling to some extent. So I would prefer to keep those terms that way.
So looking for a solution to some real life issues, that would mainly be the reason why someone would come to have such a session. That would be their purpose of doing it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, nobody wants to spend money for no reason. So unless they have a real problem that they want resolution on, they wouldn't come to a philosophical counselor. So there's also a difference between people who prefer to go to philosophical counselors. This is such an emerging field that there's still a very niche market. So it's not like anybody who has a problem thinks, oh, let me find out who is the nearest philosophical counselor. So a lot of these people who would come to me were people who were either like not willing to go to a psychological counselor, either because there's some kind of previous history that made them not want to try that route because something might have gotten exacerbated instead of getting to a resolution. Or sometimes people still have taboos about going to a counselor, and when they think about a philosophical person, they think like, okay, they are not exactly like a psychological counselor. And most of our work, at least in the US when I was practicing, wasn't really going through insurance, so there was a lot of secrecy involved, which they appreciated. So it could be multiple reasons, why a person would come to you, but always because there was a crisis that they were trying to figure out.
So would you call this practice a form of therapy? Or you would say, no, it's not therapy, it's something else.
Right. So for a question like that, I definitely have a very nuanced answer. People prefer to call therapy for such discussions, but it's not. It doesn't quite reflect what a psychological therapy would be, in the sense like when I talk to my counselees, I don't necessarily sit there and like keep listening to their feelings and keep validating their feelings and sort of like tell them how they are right and the other person is wrong. And that is not my intention at all. And if they want to be heard emotionally, I always advise them to try a counseling therapist that they can go to for a long period of time. My interest is really in trying to see if I can transform their problem in an opportunity, in a positive way, and get to the root of it, and really try to solve it and see what it is that we can do out of this situation. So I would say my approach is definitely very compassionate and also very goal oriented.
So can you say something more about how you work? Since you said you're working on transforming their problems and you're being compassionate and so on. So do you have some specific method you use, or it's different for different people, or what
It's
can we?
definitely different for different people because every problem is different, and also every solution is kind of it has to be applicable to that person. So for example, if I have somebody who is coming to me who's a very rational minded person, who's not into sort of any kind of emotional talk or whatever, I would just get to the solution very fast and present it to them as a factual thing. But let's say if I have some counselor who's really sort of completely falling apart, and they are not even able to figure out what their problem is, and everything is somehow going wrong in their life, then you do need to spend time with them, sort of cheering them up and trying to figure out. And at the same time, when somebody's talking to me, in my mind, I'm doing all the detective work to see what might be applicable, what are they open to, what is it that I can present to them. Because, I mean, think about it this way, these principles have existed for centuries, right? And people have benefited them from centuries. But why is it that we don't just open a book and go to those principles and see how it applies to us? So communication in this case becomes very, very important. If the person is open to that communication, open to receiving that understanding, then it works effectively. But if they're not open to receiving it, then you have to figure out ways to communicate those principles to them, or you have to wait until they become ready to do that. So sometimes I would tell a counselor, okay, I don't want to see you for a month because it'll take you a month to practice what we are teaching right now. And initially, there's a lot of resistance, and there's a lot of why me, self-pity, those kinds of feelings. So it takes a while for them to come to the point to see if some another principle can be applied, or if they can be progress. Also, a lot of people are perfectly happy with just a little bit of progress. I mean, it's not like they're looking to completely transform their situation. They don't even believe in that. So it takes it takes sort of all sorts of ways of communicating and seeing how much somebody wants to go with that, or where do they want to stop. People are also very busy, so as long as they have a solution for a particular problem, they're happy with that.
So the transformation of the problem would be, in a way, the solution of the problem.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a solution of the problem. And sometimes we also have patterns of those problems. So, somebody who came to me had lost a job, and they had a family to support, and they were the only breadwinner in their family. So they couldn't afford to lose a job. But then I asked them has it happened before? And it turned out that there was some kind of a pattern of losing jobs. So then they needed to do a lot of introspection as to what is happening, what is going wrong. Is it possible that if they get another job, then that's the end of the problem, or is it possible that they need to do more work on themselves to get to a point where they don't lose jobs?
Okay, so to realize maybe what is the actual problem.
Yeah, and it can sometimes take a long time. Sometimes the answer is just staring in your face, but you're kind of not willing to see that because it's very difficult to make changes to ourselves. I mean, we believe that we are good people, that we are doing the right thing, we are not trying to harm anybody. So when you have a mindset like that, then you're not open to challenging yourself.
So this practice, would you say that this is for anyone and everyone? Or some people maybe would be more suited for psychological or psychodynamic
Yeah,
therapy?
yeah, definitely. I mean, there are also people who do social work kind of therapy. There are people who do art therapy and stuff. So a lot of the times it depends on, like, what kind of a temperament you have and what are you looking to get out of that situation or out of that practice. So, for example, like, people who come into philosophical counseling, they have to have a philosophical mindset only in the sense that they have to be able to look at a problem objectively, be willing to challenge themselves, be willing to see, you know, what they want to get to. Like, for example, when somebody is in crisis and their entire vision is nothing's going to change and my life is just completely doomed. So if they have a doomsday scenario, then it becomes very difficult to work with them. So they have to have some kind of willingness to change themselves, to change the situation. I mean, technically, if you ask me a question, can it benefit everybody? Then the answer is yes, like it can benefit everybody in a way. But again, like, this is such a rational exercise in some ways that it benefits rational people much more than it benefits non-rational people. And now I'm not again, like, saying rational people are those who don't have emotions or who are not emotional. Far from it. Emotional people can also be very rational. They're rational in their emotions. And if they are very sensitive and their emotions are hurt, then they find it very difficult to deal with somebody rationally and they tend to react more. But as long as they're willing to sort of, like, think it through and willing to sort of, try it out, then this has a lot of potential to help them. If somebody is, like, sort of very, very mentally unhealthy, then this is not going to help them. Then they're better off going to psychologist or psychiatrist. So what I feel sometimes is that given how widespread the mental health issues are today, this counseling has capacity to stop people from going into, like, real mental health issues. Or when they're coming out of it, then this has the capacity to help people, like, really strongly come out of it and get into the normal range. It also has capacity for people who have a lot of medical health issues to improve their lives. Like, for example, I was talking to a medical doctor recently, and she said most of her patients think that they have medical issues when they don't. Like, they have lifestyle issues, they have perspective issues, and they don't work on that. So they get better, and then a few months later, they're back into her office with some other problem. But it's because they don't make the changes that they need to make in their life.
And I was going to ask you as well if you think there are any ethical considerations that we need to take when we are counseling someone. I guess what you just mentioned could be part of this, but maybe there are some other considerations
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely ethical considerations. Like, this has to be ethical. Philosophical counseling has to be ethical. So, like, I also give talks on philosophical counseling to people who are just beginning their career in this field. And I always give them examples such as, let's say a very rich person comes to you with a problem, or maybe somebody who's not very rich, but your counseling really helps them, and then they go out and within a week or two they win $1 million lottery. So if that's how it benefits them, the counseling, then does it mean that you might think a twinge of jealousy and think like, oh, they owe you some money from that because you enable them to get to that position? And the answer is no. So So, you should really look at it as this is your job to help them get better. But what they do with that is up to them, and it's their work, not your work. Or another example would be if you if you have counselee who's sort of like not together, not put together at that point, you could actually sort of give them some kind of advice that could be very damaging to them, but it seems okay in the short term. And you can't do that. I mean, you have to keep your conscience open all the time to see if this is such a good thing. But you can always discuss and say, like, okay, these are the short-term solutions. They might make you think that you're doing good, reaching those solutions. But in the long run, these are the consequences that you might face. And then you have to think about whether it's worth it or not. So you can see that I would recommend that you don't follow that, but do some more work on yourself.
So I think we stop soon. I just want to check with you if you think there's something you want to add, something we missed, something important.
Well, I mean, this is really the need of the time at the moment. And I also talk about, how this has been an ancient practice in India forever. And people always sought philosophical solutions, or they went to, like, sages or saints who just had a lot of knowledge because of their high level of intuition or whatever. So we don't have that access to that kind of, that system, so to say, because we just don't see people who are saints, and even if they are, we are always worried about whether there's some fraud involved or whatever. So this is a kind of replica of that system, that you have the books, you have all the texts, you have everything written for you, and the question is just how to connect with those texts, and how to make them work for you, for your advantage, for your benefit, for your sort of good life, so to say. So this is, in a way, very sort of, fully functional, tested way of helping oneself. And I know a lot of people who read my blog, who read my articles, and they help themselves. And that's good enough, because it's not like you have to go see a philosophical counselor. If you can help yourself, that's absolutely wonderful. Most importantly, you have a good life. So. So I hope, all the viewers sort of benefit from these conversations. And I want to congratulate you for starting the series of interviews and spreading spreading the word around and this knowledge around.
Well, we're continuing an old tradition.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ashwini.
Thank you.